people, we can get started. What's going on? Thank you for tuning in to this live stream edition of Mikase Sukase, and I am your host, Niko House. So I had to bring this video to you all's attention, given the video that I just covered about Russiagate and how it is pretty much becoming an abysmal failure as far as a political strategy for the Democratic Party. Now, as you all know, the Young Turks have been pouring it on as far as towing that establishment line of the Russiagate narrative. And it's really weird to me because TYT, it was supposed to be like this progressive beacon of hope. For me, I never really watched cable news, and I didn't get into cable news. I didn't get into watching really progressive news. I would read all the time, but I would never watch progressive personalities until I started watching TYT. But unfortunately, around the end of the 2016 Democratic primary, they kind of flipped the script on us a little bit, didn't they? They started pretty much echoing you better fall in line with Hillary. She's our last hope, even though she's the worst of two evils, and I don't really necessarily believe that lie. Objectively, she is not the worst. She's not the lesser of two evils between Trump and herself. So, but they started, like, you got to remember, like, and I'm going to explain in more detail about that in a second, but Cenk has never, and will never be a political strategist. Neither has Ana Kasparian. Just because really, Nala? Really? Okay, I gotta go put Nala in the room. She's doing too much right now. 1 second. Be right back. No, you're going in the room. Daddy gonna be trying to work. You ain't act a fool. You're going in the room. Right. Lord Jesus. Man. Trying to get some work done. She won't stop acting crazy. Anyway. I love my babies, y'all. I love my babies. If this is the first time you've been to this channel, you gotta know, my babies are my life. So they're always around, and the reason she loves acting a fool is because she loves my attention. She doesn't like anybody else getting it. So So like I was saying, Cenk is not a strategist. Ana Kasparian is not a strategist either. They know how to comment, ignorantly so, on politics, but that does not necessarily mean they understand what political strategies work. That does not necessarily mean they understand what the electorate and the polity is made up of and what strategies to apply given a certain circumstance in a certain situation in a certain electoral year. Like, that's just a fact. And it's evident in the way they go about pitching the establishment narrative. And I would assume that the most logical conclusion to be drawn would be that they have no idea what they're talking about, given that they are literally echoing the same establishment narrative that they said was an utter failure during the 2015 primary. Like, oh, we should never tout the establishment rhetoric because it doesn't work. It's a failure. That's why Hillary Clinton isn't winning. And then they turn around and say, well, except for in this instance with Russiagate, we should tout the establishment narrative, even though it's failing, it isn't working, and Hillary Clinton is still deemed as a less electable candidate than Donald Trump or pretty much anyone else. Her endorsement is literally the kiss of death. Dead. Just like that. That's how it happens every time. Cuomo campaign. Joe Crowley. Every time she kisses him, it's dead. They die. Candidate dies, the candidacy dies, the presidency dies. Everything she touches just wilts away like leaves. So, a compilation was done, and I believe it was done. Let me get his name correct. The channel was called Kid Hollywood, I believe. And I really wanted to play because some of it's new, some of it's older. But I wanted to play this for you all because it is very important. It's very important in understanding, like, how wrong they have been, how right Jimmy has been, and I'm only using Jimmy in this instant because Jimmy is pretty much representative of the real independent political world, the real independent political world that isn't beholden to establishment narratives or trying to I mean, because Jimmy's loved, like many of us, by the right and the left. It's not like it's unique in people's affection for him. People on the left critique him much more than anyone on the right, which in my opinion is okay, because that's how we know he isn't being beholden to anything but the truth. Whether or not he may make a misstep, because all of us make missteps. It is different than being beholden to, I don't know, say a $20 million donor. Just, things like that. So really quick, I want to run through this.
666 says on YouTube super chat, are TYT ever going to address Jimmy Dore still defending Russia and blaming Clinton and Obama for everything after 2 years? Look, we have difference of opinion. It's okay.
Massive differences in opinion.
That's okay.
Let me just be clear about that.
That's okay.
No. If Trump gets elected, it's okay. He's going to be a disaster, and we're going to have a revolution. And then as soon as he gets elected, stop talking about Trump so much. You talk about Trump. That's all you talk about. You're obsessed with Trump. First of all, President of the United States, yeah, we're going to talk about Donald Trump. Okay? Get off my balls. If you don't like it, then go host your own show.
Okay, so, yeah, Jimmy has a show. But anyway, so let me just go ahead and address that part. What Jimmy said actually is coming true, and it's a sentiment that many of us echoed as well. Trump was a wake-up call, right? Racism did not start nor was invented by Donald Trump. However, his dog whistle tactics brought out a lot of racists who were already here. But if any of you know my history, I've been a victim of police brutality several times. I've been called a cotton picker and all kinds of things, the N-word. I mean, time and time again, even on this channel. So racism was not invented by Donald Trump, but it woke people up to the realities that many people had to deal with every day because Donald Trump did happen to bring a lot of those qualities out. So then people were more inclined to deal with it and even really address how they may have implicitly or intrinsically had racial qualities that they may have displayed without even knowing it. So like Jimmy was right, and it made people decide, wow, this is the end game. Like after everything that we've done after the Obama era, after we sat back, we were quiet, we were complicit in the establishment, we were complicit in Obama era that led to the deaths of millions. We had more police brutality and more police fatalities of black males and black women and women of color and people of color in general, and a brutality of people in color in general. It's in ever in history under the Obama administration. So people finally decided to wake up. But for Ana Kasparian to then say, oh, he's the president of the United States, and so I'm going to talk about him. What we're referring to as far as the obsessing over Trump is like, you're covering Stormy Daniels. You're not covering the legitimate economic turmoil that Trump has been perpetuating, like with his BS tax bill, okay? You're not, like, that tax bill is bullshit, but you're not covering it because the donors are benefiting from it. Cenk is benefiting from it. Ana is benefiting from it. They're both millionaires, so they don't see a problem with it. They cover, like, oh, it's going to help the upper class. Like, but they're not talking about the residual effects. They're not talking about what's really going on in the economy, nor will they actually address what the Democrats should actually be doing to win the election. They just keep talking about Donald Trump. That's the point that I'm making. That's the point that Jimmy Dore makes, and that Tim Black and Jamal Thomas and even H.A. Goodman, even though he's a little bit more on the conservative side now, we all talk about that. Like, how about stop talking about Donald Trump and these issues that are actually bolstering his presidency because you were creating a martyr out of someone who should not be, and focus on the issues that affect every single American. A Gallup poll showed that 55% of Americans believe that the economy is doing well, but in fact, we are on a bubble that is about to burst, but the people who are paying them are also getting paid by the powers that be. And so they won't cover the fact that the housing market is absolutely abysmal right now. Let's just talk about Stormy Daniels more. Let's talk about Russiagate more. Even though most of America does not believe that Russiagate had any effect on the election, only 34% of independents believe that. Only 39% of people believe that Russiagate actually had an effect on the election. That's not going to get Trump out of office. And if you're claiming that you're saying all these things and you're constantly talking about Trump to get him out of office, then how about you start focusing on the things that will get him out of office? Because that narrative is not it. But let's be very clear. MSNBC, CNN, even Fox News and TYT and all the shows that are under TYT had record-breaking narratives off of the Trump effect, talking about Trump brought ratings, and that's why you keep talking about him. Don't try to make it seem like it's altruistic. Don't try to make it seem like it's part of this ultimate political strategy. Jimmy and the rest of TYT differ greatly on this on this main point. Jimmy cares about going forward. He cares about the future. He cares about the people. I know because I see Jimmy at events. I see Jimmy participating in activism. I see Ron also from his show, from Ron Pacone, and Get Your News on Ron, and he's also on the Jimmy Dore show, and also sometimes co-hosts Aggressive Progressives. They're at events. They're talking to people. Jimmy and Ron both interact with people on TYT, or excuse me, on Twitter and on Facebook and things like that. They're actually in the trenches, and therefore their politics and their commentary reflect that, right? TYT is not that. The rest of TYT are so blinded because they're from legacy media. People don't know. They know about Cenk working at MSNBC, but so did Ana. Ana used to work at Legacy Media. Even Jordan Sheridan, who y'all used to love, used to work for Fox News. The guy who's in charge of their sports used to work for, I want to say ESPN. He used to work for ESPN. So, all of the main faces that you see on TYT are still in a bubble of, I hate to say privilege in that sense, but they're in a bubble of political privilege where most of the politics that affects the rest of the world, that affects the people that Jimmy connects to on a daily basis and that Ron connects to on a daily basis, they don't affect the rest of TYT. And therefore, their opinions are misguided. And the worst way to deal with that, if you're TYT, in my humble opinion, is to quote the establishment media that you were supposed to be railing against. You supposedly hate them. But all you've ever done since the end of the 2016 election is quote them and use them in their justification for your personal opinions. And then getting upset because Jimmy calls you out on your lies. And because Kyle will go on to a show, Kyle from Secular Talk, will go on to your show and debate you and beat you into a pulp, Cenk. And then you're like, oh, you just don't get it. You just don't get it. And you make fun of the deep state like it's not a real thing, even though every CIA whistleblower who's come out and said, yeah, it's real. It's not a joke. And it's not even a hard thing to comprehend. There are people behind the scenes who control our politics and our international relations. It's not a very complex thing to understand or internalize. It seems more likely than the other thing that everything that happens within the government and within international relations, we can take it on its face for whatever we see on the establishment media. That's what you don't believe, supposedly. So why would you not accept the idea that there's a deep state? All these things that I believe are basic common knowledge to the rest of the independent world simply is not being absorbed by the rest of the TYT network, which is why Jimmy himself seems to be more popular than the entire network of TYT. But let's go ahead and continue.
We're in, not even 1 year into the seven-dimensional chess of let the fascists take over the country for 4 or 8 years and we'll see what happens.
That's why we thought during the election it's a little too cute by half to be like, well, but then if that happens, and then that'll happen, and then this will happen. But first we gotta lose, right?
And I'm not afraid of a Trump. Don't be afraid of a Trump president. The whole country, all of a sudden we're all going to turn into a bunch of Nazis. And in 2 years, the Congress flips to liberal. In 2 years, that's how Donald Trump, if he's president, will wipe out the Republican Party. Because they will flip the Senate, they will flip the House, it'll be...
Jimmy was actually wrong about this. I don't get to say that often. But the reason why isn't because necessarily that his theory wasn't correct, but I said myself that they're not going to flip the House and the Senate because that would be assuming and presuming that Trump is going to tell the truth about what's going on in the economy. That would be assuming that the Democrats are going to do their due diligence and tell people the truth about what's going on with DACA and immigration, that they're going to tell people the truth about what's happening in the economy, about how we're on the housing bubble, about how, and they're going to use legitimate strategists in their races, but they're using glorified fundraisers in their races. So like, that's the only thing that, I mean, I get what he's saying though. It is waking people up, and I would rather people be awake and then moving forward with a legitimate plan of action that is addressing substantively the issues that we're dealing with daily, than to actually be asleep and just allowing the Democrats to take over again.
Progressives in 2 years, and then in 4 years, Trump's out, we get a real progressive in, we have the whole goddamn government again.
You sound like we have more to win by having Trump in office than Bernie, though.
No, not that.
Well, what about, I'm worried about this, the Supreme Court, of course, you know?
Look, one of the arguments that you would hear for...
By the way, that Supreme Court argument is the weakest argument you could possibly make. And especially now that we have the benefit of living in the era of Democrats literally, hey, Trump, who you want? You can have him, 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 you can have him. You sure you don't want to put up a fight? Nah, you can have him, you can have him, you can have him. I haven't even told you who I want it yet. Doesn't matter, we want to go home. You can have him. Now, the idea that somehow Hillary Clinton would be guaranteed to put in a progressive or a liberal Supreme Court justice, which is simply not true. Let's be very honest. TPP was first and foremost on her list, which is why she flip-flopped so very, very hard and so very, very obviously during the 2016 general election. She would have given up anything and everything and called it compromise, right? We have to compromise. We can't get everything we want. And TPP is the gold standard. It is the gold standard for trade. No. You wouldn't have had that Supreme Court seat. And guess what she would have done? She would have, because this is how they work, right? She would have given up one of the seats. Somebody else might have passed or stepped down, because it looks like Kennedy was going to step down regardless. And then she would have then used that against you in her re-election. There was never a guarantee that we were going to get progressive seats. In fact, if you look at, if you objectively analyze the circumstances at the time, we weren't going to get it. There was less of an opportunity for us to get a progressive, and it wasn't going to change just because Trump got elected or because Hillary got elected. We were going to end up with conservative justices regardless, because that's what controlled opposition does. You can't have controlled opposition with a dominantly progressive or liberal judge. And on top of that, Hillary Clinton would have made sure we put in Supreme Court justices so that if any of the election fraud cases got appealed to the Supreme Court, we lose. The DNC fraud lawsuit, if it goes to the Supreme Court, we lose. The Laverne versus United States House of Representatives, where essentially they'll have to totally revamp how we do Congress. You're talking about 6,000 members. It makes it impossible for lobbyists to buy them off. The delegate counts across the country increase. You have a more diluted elected official pool. Therefore, you have to pay off obscene amounts of money. You have to pay off obscene amounts of money to buy that many politicians off, and it wouldn't benefit the lobbyists or the powers that be. And therefore, that would have gotten killed by any justice that Hillary Clinton puts in power. So ultimately, the ends did justify the means in that regard, because it's not like the the justices are going to overturn Roe v. Wade. They've already said that they're not doing that. It's not like the justices are going to overturn legalize anti-discrimination with marriage. They're not going to make it reintroduce segregation into the schools. It's idiocy and lunacy to think that. Even Republicans have to maintain the air of objectivity, even though they're not, right? We know what they would do if they could. But the thing about dog whistling is that you can't hear it. You can't hear the sound when you introduce it. They're controlled opposition as well. If they get everything done that they want to, how are they going to run on getting everything done that their electorate wants? So yeah.
For people who thought it's terrible to vote for Hillary Clinton because she's the lesser of two evils was, look, even if someone like Trump gets elected, he's so horrible that it will spur a revolution. right? As a result of Trump being a disaster, people will want a progressive revolution.
Which is
But
happening.
then, a lot of the people who made that very argument now turn around and criticize you if you do your job and report on what Trump is doing in office.
That's not true, actually. Progressive revolution is just that. Not a neoliberal revolution. Not a neoliberal revolution. That's not what we wanted. We legitimately want a progressive revolution. Now, inherent, in my opinion, in a progressive revolution is the unapologetic, objective truth. That is not just the convenient truth that Stormy Daniels took money from Trump in a sex scandal. Like talking about Trump's like past affairs and perpetuating utter lies that are about Russia that are unproven and only can really facilitate to harm relations between Russia. Remember the North Korea, whenever North Korea was going on, all of a sudden they didn't want Trump. Remember, it was, he's going to start World War III with North Korea. And then it's, he's being too soft on North Korea. What? You're not doing your job. What you're doing is the part of your job that gets your show the most positive ratings from the neoliberal left, because you're trying to draw in that CNN, MSNBC crowd. You're trying to leech off of those people. The progressive revolution has started with truth. We tell the truth about Medicare for all, single payer health care, by showing that even with the most modest conservative reports, it saves the country money. We tell the truth about the military-industrial complex, which you absolutely refuse to do, Anna, Jenk, which Jimmy does. See, that's how Jimmy helps to further the progressive revolution, because if you tell the truth, Trump's name gets brought up one way or the other. I tell the truth about Trump all the time, but I tell the objective truth. When he did good on North Korea, I said it. When he did well on pulling the CIA out of Syria, I said it. Whenever he stood up and gave the most prepared, one of the best speeches that he's really ever given, he wants to facilitate peace between Russia and North Korea and the United States, and that he will not allow partisan politics to dictate international relations. That was one of the most profound speeches that Trump has given, and I gave him credit for that. However, Trump is lying about the economy. Trump is lying about the tax bill. Trump is lying about a lot of things. Trump's relationship with Saudi Arabia is dangerous. Trump's relationship with Israel is dangerous. Trump is lying about DACA to both sides of the fence. He's lying about the actual numbers for immigration. And on top of that, he's lying about what ICE is supposed to do and what they have been doing. On the other side of that, he's lying to his followers, saying that he's going to get rid of DACA. And it's been 2 years. Where's DACA at? DACA is still in place. So, like, if you're telling the truth, like Trump's name is going to come up one way or the other. But in order for you to have a progressive revolution, there has to be progress, not regressivism, not resistance. Inherent in resist doesn't mean you're necessarily moving forward. In fact, it's the total opposite. It means you're staying in your place and you're preventing somebody from pushing you back. The problem is, in the position that we're in right now as a country, it is not good enough. People have to work 2 or 3 jobs. Talk about the economy. Talk about the fact that people are being deceived by the economy. You're not covering the news, and your analysis is just awful. You're not really good at your job. So for you to attack Jimmy, and this is coming from a journalistic perspective, Jimmy has improved on his knowledge on what's going on in the world exponentially from the time that I first watched him. And Jimmy's growth as a journalist, of course, he's always been a great comedian, but as a journalist, and his personal growth as a brand and as a business is emblematic of the fact that people aren't buying your nonsense anymore. You've lost tens of thousands of memberships, right? While Jimmy has been telling the objective truth and has been growing out of this world. Possibly the most popular progressive channel on YouTube. So if he's growing out of this world while you're losing numbers, who do you think is really leading the progressive revolution as far as journalism is concerned? And like I said, I'm talking about Jimmy in this regard because Jimmy is at the forefront of progressive journalism because of just how popular he is and the whole thing with TYT. But if we're being honest, TYT is representative of the establishment left, and Jimmy Dore is representative of us on the progressive or the independent or populist left, where we're telling the truth and they're telling the world that our narrative is actually the wrong one, and what we're trying to do is install fascists. Like John Iadarola said, he said that there was a fascist that we put in the fascists by, we defeat the Democrats by putting in the fascists. And I'm like, in what world do you live in where the Democrats, as they currently stand, as the party is currently constructed, how are Democrats not fascists? They keep pretending as if the Dems are so much different than the Republicans. They're not. They are controlled opposition. Didn't the Democrats just fast track all the federal judges that, 84 federal judges that Trump put forth to be put in office? 84.
Okay? And I do want to clarify that error. I think that there was someone on this network who said that Manafort's convictions had nothing to do with Russia.
But I don't understand how that
Manafort's convictions literally had nothing to do with Russia. I'm just going to leave it at that. Like, if I have to explain that to you, bruh, nothing to do with Russia. Manafort's investigation started a while ago. Actually, funny enough, Manafort's investigations, if I recall, actually started originally while Robert Mueller was still the director of the FBI. But he didn't do anything about it. And now he cares. But let's continue.
Validates the first public test of Mueller's investigation into Russian meddling, because none of this shit is about Russian meddling. None of it.
Yep.
It absolutely did have something to do with Russia because he made his money through Russia, through representing Russian interests in Ukraine in order to help Vladimir Putin achieve what he wanted in Ukraine.
Y'all, I want you all to listen to that, listen to that profound analysis of the master of international. Oh, we're gonna listen to that again. Oh my God.
Of Mueller's investigation into Russian meddling, because none of this shit is about Russian meddling. None of it.
Oh my God.
It absolutely did have something to do with Russia because he made his money through Russia, through representing Russian interests in Ukraine in order to help Vladimir Putin achieve what he wanted in Ukraine. And then he made $60 million doing it.
He got his money through Russia in Ukraine to help Vladimir Putin do what he wanted in Ukraine. I guarantee you, Ana Kasparian has no idea what Vladimir Putin wants in Ukraine. Like, I don't think she has any idea what she's talking about at all. Like, all the money that Manafort made was before this election. Like, she is saying that Manafort's real estate investments in Ukraine came by way of doing favors directly for Vladimir Putin? Yo, I don't know if y'all watch House of Cards, but they could have done a better job concocting some BS story than Anna did, and she's a millionaire. She gets paid millions of dollars to say stuff like this. Wow. I'm like, I didn't even watch that part of the video because I actually was getting like a little sick to my stomach listening. But oh wow, oh that was like, it was like listening to a child rationalize nonsense. Do y'all know something about Manafort? Do you know that all the charges that were part of Russia, like that had anything to do with Russia, those were mistrial. They were a mistrial, as in he didn't get brought down on literally anything that had to do with Russia. And I can break down the relationship between Ukraine and Russia, but like I don't have time to right now. But just know that the Ukrainian oligarchs kind of run the Ukraine right now, so it's a very complex relationship. And I like the way Dewey Bueno. I'm glad you brought up Uranium One because do you hear that loose connection, the extremely loose connection that Ana Kasparian just tried to make about Manafort and Russia? And yes, money making bear. Ana Kasparian is worth approximately $2.5 million last time I checked, and I'm sure she's probably worth more than that by now. But like, you hear that loose connection she just tried to make between Manafort and Russia, but whenever Uranium One gets brought up, oh no, that's been debunked. That's been debunked. No, it hasn't. It hasn't been debunked at all. It hasn't been debunked, even a little bit. Not even a little bit. What Ana doesn't like is because what a lot of people don't know, Ana doesn't like the fact that Jimmy is popular. That's what it is. I mean, I want to be honest with you. Ana used to be the most popular person on TYT. She really was, objectively. Her channel by itself at one point, her personal channel had like 3 million subscribers to TYT's like 1.8 million at the time. She was extremely popular. But then Jimmy came. And guess how Jimmy became popular? Jimmy told the truth. Guess how Tim Black became popular? Tim told the truth, and Jamal Thomas grew his popularity by telling the truth, and Kyle Kalinske and Mike Figueredo and all these people grew their popularity by telling the truth, while Ana was getting verbally assaulted in her comment sections because of what she just did right there. Because you tried to make these loose connections. Manafort is absolutely guilty of Russian collusion. What about Uranium One? No, that's conspiracy theory. What are you talking about? Right wing conspiracy. Can you believe that this woman is a professor? Holy shit. Let's continue.
And hid $30 million from the U.S. government so he could evade taxes. So the root of that problem was Russia and the fact that Manafort was a foreign agent who failed to register as a foreign agent here in the United States. Just want to make sure that we correct any errors that might have aired on our network. I think that liberals
you see how she tried to slide that little attack at Jimmy? Woman, you are a walking error. I hope you're watching this, Ana, because you're awful at your job. I'm sure you might be a sweet person, but I'm actually starting to doubt that you're a sweet person. I think that you're conveniently sweet to people who can benefit you in your popularity and your pocketbook. Like, just being honest. You came from a mainstream network, but your style wasn't accepted. It's the same with Cenk. Cenk's style wasn't accepted, but that does not make you not establishment. You both came from the establishment media. The establishment media is like running TYT. You're just on YouTube. You're the establishment media. You're just on YouTube. That's it. But you still come from establishment media roots. You still came from those journalism schools where you were coached and molded into being what's considered. Lee Camp. Thanks for. Oh man, I'm sorry for forgetting Lee. Lee, you know you're my homie. It should go without being said how dope you are and how dope Redacted Tonight is. Shout out to Lee Camp. But you've been molded into what the world believes journalists should say and what they should talk about. But like, once again, that does not make you an analyst. You're not an analyst. You're not a strategist. And you don't talk to the people like Jimmy does, or a lot of these other progressive journalists like Lee Camp. Like, Lee is extremely popular. You know what Lee does after he gets done with his show? He doesn't go hide in a corner and laugh with his other millionaire friends. Look at how rich we are. All we have to do is keep saying that every progressive independent is a conspiracy theorist and we'll stay millionaires. Lee goes out to drink beers with his support base, with his colleagues, right after he gets done with his show. That's how you know what's going on in the world. Stop detaching yourself and reconnect to the base that you're losing. It's falling from beneath your feet.
Be gullible if it's confirmation bias. So for instance, during this past election, there was definitely a huge portion of the Democratic Party that hated Hillary, despised her, and the confirmation bias that they believed, right, was that she had like a terminal illness that she was trying to hide. Like, how absurd was that? It was insanely absurd. It drove me crazy, but
it was absurd to believe that Hillary Clinton had an illness that was potentially terminal, even though she ended up having to get seen by her doctor after she fainted. Remember, it was absurd to think that she was sick until she passed out in the middle of the 9/11 memorial. It was absurd for us to assume that she was sick. It is absurd to even question the health of someone who is potentially going to be running the country, which is the most stressful job in the world. Conspiracy theories. Why would we want to know that the person who's going to be running the world is healthy? Why on earth would we want to know something like that? But once again, I'm not a Trump supporter, but it was okay for the left to constantly question the mental health of Donald Trump, which in some ways is a little insulting and a little bit harder to prove, but it was okay for the left, the neoliberal left, to constantly question the mental health of Donald Trump. But when anybody else questioned the health based off of physical evidence of Hillary Clinton, we're all conspiracy theorists. Let's continue.
there was a portion of liberals who certainly believed that.
But what was wrong, like if you faint, usually your head goes, but her head didn't go. She was stiff. It looked like a neurological thing, like she had a spasm or a thing, because like she was like this, so she was like jerky, like someone with.
Are you a doctor?
I am not a doctor, but that's not how people faint. And you know why I'm allowed to? I give myself permission to speculate because they lied. So once they lie about it, now we all get to speculate.
Wow.
She's got meningitis.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
They did lie,
and
if
you
you don't
never
remember.
listened to Alex Jones. Because I got to tell you, it's almost like you're ripping him off right now.
Yes, that's true. And by the way, a lot of people just got mad at you for saying that because they still believe it to this day.
Well, good.
By the way,
I don't care. If you believe that, you're insane. And
I just want you to call, because we're going to finish it off right there. I want you to recall. Remember, you're insane if you believe that Hillary Clinton was probably sick during the presidential election, despite the fact she refused to campaign. She was constantly locked away. She was always wrapped up. Oh, and she literally passed out, went into like some weird spasm during the 9/11 memorial and had to be housed and seen by her private doctor. But you're literally insane for questioning the health care of the person who's going to be the next president, or potentially was going to be the next president of the United States of America. And you wonder why you're falling in popularity while the rest of the independent journalism world is rising and catching up to you. Because you're not one of us. And in my humble opinion, it is becoming more and more clear to myself and other people as well that you were never really one of us. But you saw a niche that you could crawl into and take advantage of, like many people we've seen in the independent movement. Jealousy is unbecoming of you, Anna. If you were going to, you can admit that you're wrong. Like, you can admit when you're wrong. But doubling down like this constantly, saying that it's insane for people to think that Manafort wasn't connected to Putin because there's been no proof that Manafort was connected to Putin, saying it's insane for anybody to think that Hillary Clinton had healthcare issues even though she passed out because of her healthcare issues. I mean, I still remember the Seth Rich conversation. You don't have to say this person is guilty of murdering Seth Rich for you to not look at the video that Cenk did and be utterly disgusted, saying that everything that was coming out about Seth Rich was a lie. Why? Because the Huffington Post said so. They said that the uranium one was debunked. That was a lie. And the fact that y'all have the nerve to insult Jimmy Dore, because almost everything that Jimmy, along with a lot of other progressives, have predicted has come true, is really emblematic of the fantasy world that you all have lived in for the last 2 years. And you're firing progressives, which doesn't look good. Which is why it's like I'm saying, like I've been saying, I'm starting to to legitimately believe, that they have never been on our side, but we were a nice, comfy niche for them to profit from. And they're losing their profit, and it's making them more and more frustrated. They're losing their memberships, and it's making them more and more frustrated. They're not getting the views consistently that Jimmy is getting, and a lot of other people like Secular Talk and Humanist Report, like they're not getting the views, and it's making them frustrated. Their bottom line is being affected. And that is why they're getting so frustrated about what's happening with Jimmy Dore and this revolution that they're seeing take place. That's not only happening on the ground in politics with people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib, happening with Andrew Gillum, but it's happening within journalism and how we consume our information. People would rather have the uncomfortable, inconvenient truth than another profit-driven perpetual lie. And with that being said, people, thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream of Mi Casa es Tu Casa, and I urge you all that more than anything else, always remember, find your balance. Peace.